Admiral Kim Hu-Yanwoo gripped the metal railing of the command bridge as another explosion rocked the TNS Defiance. The massive warship shuddered under the impact of alien plasma fire, and sparks flew from damaged control panels around him. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an angry glow, making the faces of his crew look like ghosts. Through the thick glass of the main viewport, he could see the nightmare unfolding before them. Human ships were dying. The sleek vessels that had once been the pride of Earth's fleet were now burning wrecks. Spinning helplessly through space as alien weapons tore them apart, some exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Others simply went dark and drifted away like dead fish in a vast ocean. "Sir, we've lost contact with the colony ships," Lieutenant Park Mina called out from her station. Her hands shook as she tried to work the damaged communications array. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. "Estimated civilian casualties. 3 million. 3 million. The number hit Hyenwoo like a physical blow. Those weren't just statistics on a report. They were families, children, people who had trusted the fleet to protect them. People who were now dead because humanity's weapons couldn't pierce alien shields. The Zephyrian Empire had been crushing human forces for 3 long years. Every battle ended the same way, with human defeat and alien victory. The insect-like Zephyrians were bad enough on their own, but they had allies. The reptilian Drakmor fought alongside them, and together they formed an unstoppable war machine that rolled over human colonies like a massive steamroller. Their technology made human weapons look like toys. Energy shields that could stop anything humans fired at them. Plasma cannons that cut through the strongest human armor like it was made of paper. Ships that moved faster and hit harder than anything in the human fleet. Worst of all, they seemed to enjoy the killing. Captain Lee Dongmin's voice came through the communication system from his escort ship. The soul's pride. Static made his words hard to understand, but his fear came through clearly. "Admiral, we can't hold this line. They're jamming our communications and broadcasting the executions again." Hyenwoo felt his stomach turn. He knew what Lee meant. The aliens had a sick habit of capturing human soldiers and torturing them to death while broadcasting the videos across space. It was psychological warfare at its worst, designed to break human morale and spread terror. Sure enough, the main screens on the bridge flickered and changed. Instead of showing the battle outside, they now displayed images that would haunt Hyenwoo's dreams forever. Human soldiers, some barely more than teenagers, were being held down by chittering Zephyrian warriors. The insect-like aliens were pouring their bioacid over the prisoners, dissolving them slowly while they screamed. The Zephyrians made sounds that might have been laughter. It was a horrible clicking, buzzing noise that came from their mandibles. They seemed to find human suffering amusing, like watching a particularly entertaining show. To them, humans weren't people. They were just animals to be hunted, tortured, and consumed. Hyenwoo closed his eyes, but he could still hear the screams. When he opened them again, his face was hard as stone. "All ships, fall back to the Sol perimeter," he ordered. His voice was steady, but inside he felt like screaming himself. "Signal High Command. Tell them the outer colonies are lost." The retreat began immediately. What was left of the human fleet turned away from the advancing aliens and activated their faster-than-light drives. One by one, the ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind another dead system. Another failed defense. Another victory for the aliens. As the Defiance prepared to jump, Hyenwoo took one last look at the Kepler system. Just days ago, it had been home to millions of humans. Now it was empty except for wreckage and alien ships. The Zephyrians would strip everything useful from the dead worlds and move on to their next target. The hyperspace jump felt different this time. Usually the brief moment of transition was peaceful, almost meditative. Now it felt like running away, like abandoning everyone they had sworn to protect. The stars stretched into lines, then vanished as the ship entered the strange space between dimensions. When they emerged near Earth's solar system, Hyenwoo stared at the tactical display showing their new defensive positions. The aliens had pushed them back to humanity's doorstep. There was nowhere left to run. The next battle would be for Earth itself, and based on everything they had seen, humanity was going to lose. The Admiral walked to his private quarters and sat heavily in his chair. On his desk was a picture of his family, his wife and 2 daughters, safe on Earth for now. How long before alien ships appeared in Earth's sky? How long before those horrible broadcasts showed his own people being dissolved in bioacid? Conventional warfare had failed completely. Human courage meant nothing against superior alien technology. Human strategy couldn't overcome the simple fact that alien weapons were better in every way. Something had to change, or humanity would join the long list of species the Zephyrians had wiped out. Outside his window, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful, peaceful, doomed. The elevator descended deep into the moon's surface, past levels that most people didn't even know existed. President Choi So-young stood silently as the numbers on the display went lower and lower, each floor taking her further from the light of Earth and deeper into humanity's darkest secrets. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a corridor, carved from solid rock, no windows, no decorations. It's just bare walls and harsh lighting that made everything look cold and dead. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward the meeting room that officially didn't exist on any government records. The chamber was small and circular, with a table made of black stone in the center. Around it sat the most powerful people in human space, but today they looked like frightened children. The weight of impending extinction pressed down on all of them like a heavy blanket. General Yoon Tae-ho was already there. His military uniform wrinkled, and his eyes red from lack of sleep. He had been working non-stop since the latest reports came in from the front lines. Admiral Kim Hoyeon-woo sat across from him, still wearing the same clothes he had worn during the retreat from Kepler. His face looked like it was carved from stone. President. Choi took her seat at the head of the table. She had always prided herself on staying calm during crises. But today, her hands shook slightly as she placed them on the cold surface. Everyone could see the cracks in her composure. The facade of confident leadership was crumbling under the reality of what they faced. "Show them," she said quietly. General Yoon touched a control panel, and the air above the table shimmered. A 3-dimensional map of human space appeared, floating like a ghost made of light. But it wasn't the same map they had looked at just months ago, where once there had been hundreds of green dots representing human colonies. Now there were mostly red marks showing fallen worlds. "The numbers don't lie," General Yoon said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "At current casualty rates, we have 6 months before they reach Earth, maybe less." The red markers seemed to pulse like drops of blood. Each one represented millions of dead humans. Each one was a failure of the military to protect their own people. The yellow markers showed worlds currently under attack, their populations fighting desperate last stands that everyone knew would end in defeat. "Our conventional forces are useless," Admiral Hyun-woo said bluntly. "Their shields stop everything we have. Our weapons cut through our armor like it's made of tissue paper. We're fighting with stone knives against laser cannons." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the air recycling system. Everyone stared at the holographic map, watching humanity's slow death unfold before their eyes. It felt like watching a terminal patient's vital signs slowly flatline. Then Dr. Han Soo-jin cleared her throat. She was a small woman with graying hair and thick glasses, the kind of person who usually stayed in the background during important meetings. But today, all eyes turned to her as she slowly stood up. Her hands were shaking badly as she reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sealed data pad. The device was black metal with warning labels in multiple languages. She placed it on the table like she was handling a live bomb. "There is another option," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Project Erebus." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 20 degrees. Everyone knew that name, though it was never supposed to be spoken aloud. Project Erebus was the collection of weapons that had been locked away in the deepest vaults, surrounded by more security than the president's own bedroom. Dr. Han's voice grew steadier as she spoke. Like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis, quantum disruptors that can unravel matter at the smallest level, making things simply stop existing. self-copying nanomachines programmed to destroy all life forms except humans. Weapons that create artificial black holes to swallow entire solar systems. Technology that can make reality itself bend and break, causing enemy fleets to phase out of existence. She paused and looked around the table. These weapons were built during the early days of space exploration, when we thought we might encounter hostile alien life. They were tested once on an uninhabited moon. The moon no longer exists. Not destroyed, it simply isn't there anymore. Admiral Hyenwu leaned forward, his face pale. The collateral damage from weapons like that would be total, President. Choi interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Everything dies. Us, them, and probably everything else in the surrounding solar systems. The room fell silent again. The holographic map continued to pulse with its red markers, showing the alien advance that would reach Earth in less than 6 months. Outside this buried chamber, billions of humans lived their daily lives, unaware that their leaders were about to make a decision that would change the nature of war forever. The question isn't whether we should use these weapons, President Choi continued. The question is, do we die with honor, following the rules of civilized warfare, or do we ensure our enemies die with us? One by one, the leaders of humanity raised their hands to vote. Not a single person abstained. The decision was unanimous. As the authorization codes were entered into the sealed datapad, humanity crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had chosen survival over honor, existence over morality. The weapons of Project Erebus were about to be unleashed. Dr. O. Ji-hoon sat in the command center of the research station Prometheus, staring at screens filled with numbers that represented death on a scale never before seen in the galaxy. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to look away from the displays. The first phase of Project Erebus was happening right now. He was watching humanity become something monstrous. The station floated in empty space, hidden behind a small moon where nobody would think to look for it. From here, Dr. O could control weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. His fingers moved across the control panels like a pianist playing a deadly song. Each button pressed sending invisible death across the galaxy. Quantum mines are in position, reported his assistant, Lieutenant Nam Yujin. Her voice was steady, but Dr. O could see the fear in her eyes. They all knew what they were about to unleash. All target systems are seeded and ready for activation. Quantum disruption mines were humanity's first gift to their enemies. Each mine was no bigger than a marble, but they contained technology that could break the basic rules of physics. When activated, they would create zones where matter itself became unstable. Atoms would forget how to hold together. The very fabric of space would tear like old cloth. Best of all, the mines were completely invisible and undetectable.
Ow.
The aliens had no idea they were floating through minefields that could erase them from existence. Captain, Kong Subin's voice crackled over the communication system from her strike cruiser, the Busan Thunder. All ships, maintain formation. Remember what we're here for. We're not here to win battles anymore. We're here to end species. Dr. O watched the tactical display as the human fleet moved toward the main Zephyrian battle group.
Watch the Busan Thunder.
Looked different now, its hull bristling with weapons that had been forbidden just days ago. Reality manipulation drives, singularity cannons, devices that could reach into other dimensions and pull out pure destruction. The other ships in the strike force had been similarly modified. Each vessel now carried enough firepower to destroy planets. The crews who operated them had volunteered for a mission they knew would change them forever. There was no coming back from this kind of warfare. On his screens, Dr. O could see the Zephyrian fleet moving to intercept the human ships. The alien vessels moved with the same arrogant confidence they had shown in every previous battle. They'd crushed human fleets dozens of times before. Why should this time be any different? Alien. Fleet is closing distance, Lieutenant Nam reported. They're not even bothering to raise shields yet. The Zephyrians thought they were facing the same weak humans they had been defeating for 3 years. They had no idea that humanity had decided to throw away every rule of civilized warfare. They were about to learn that when humans stopped holding back, they became the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Activate quantum mines, Dr. O commanded. His finger hovering over the control that would cross the final line. He pressed the button. The effect was immediate and impossible. To describe, the Zephyrian ships didn't explode. They didn't burn or break apart. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, solid and real. The next moment there was just empty space where they had been. Entire squadrons of alien warships winked out of reality like candles being blown out by a cosmic wind. The quantum mines created bubbles of unstable spacetime that rejected the presence of matter. Anything caught inside simply unraveled at the molecular level, its atoms forgetting how to stay together. Dr. O watched in horrified fascination as a Zephyrian dreadnought, a massive ship the size of a small city, encountered one of the quantum fields. The front of the ship touched the invisible barrier and began to fade away like it was made of mist. The rest of the vessel followed, disappearing section by section until nothing remained but empty space. "My God," Lieutenant Nam whispered. "There. Just ... gone." The surviving Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, but it was too late. Captain Kong's modified fleet was already among them. Weapons charged and ready. Singularity torpedoes created miniature black holes that devoured everything they touched. Manipulation beams caused alien ships to phase out of existence, lost forever in dimensions that human science barely understood. "Phase 2 is ready," Dr. O announced, his voice hollow. "Release the nanoswarms on their staging worlds." This was the part that would haunt his dreams forever. The nanoswarms were microscopic machines, each one smaller than a virus, but infinitely more deadly. They were programmed with one simple instruction: consume all non-human biological matter. Dr. O activated the delivery systems, and invisible clouds of destruction began raining down on 17 different worlds. The nanomachines were self-replicating, meaning they would make copies of themselves as they worked. Then hours, they would cover entire continents. On the planet Zephyr Beta, the machines began their terrible work. They consumed Zephyrian colonists first, breaking down their insect-like bodies at the cellular level. Then they moved on to the Drakmor ground forces, dissolving the reptilian warriors where they stood. Even the alien plants and animals were not spared. Everything that was not human was food for the swarms. Dr. O watched the bio-readings from the target planets drop to zero one by one. Billions of lives ended in a matter of hours. Entire ecosystems were stripped bare and left as sterile rock. The galaxy was learning that humanity's previous restraint had not been weakness. It had been mercy, and that mercy was now gone forever. Colonel Lim Jae-soon checked his weapon one final time as the dropship shuddered through the atmosphere of Zephyr Prime. The homeworld of the insectoid race spread out below them like a nightmare, made real twisted spires of chitin and metal reaching toward the sky. Hive cities that housed billions of the creatures that had tortured and killed his people. 30 seconds to landing, called the pilot over the intercom. "Good hunting, Marines." Lim looked at the faces of his soldiers. These weren't the same men and women who had started this war 3 years ago. Those naive warriors had believed in honor and rules of engagement. These were something else entirely: hardened killers who had seen too much alien cruelty to care about mercy anymore. "Listen up," Lim said, his voice cutting through the noise of the engines. "Remember what we saw on those broadcasts? Remember the screams of our people being dissolved in bioacid? They showed no mercy to our civilians. We show none to theirs." Dropship touched down with a violent shake, and the rear door dropped open. Alien air rushed in, thick and humid, with the smell of decay and insect musk. The Marines charged out into a landscape that looked like something from hell itself. Zephyrian warriors were already rushing toward them, their insect-like bodies covered in natural armor that had stopped human bullets for 3 years. They moved with terrifying speed, their mandibles clicking, and their multiple eyes reflecting the light of their weapons. In the past, this sight would have sent human soldiers running in terror, but Lim's Marines weren't carrying the same weapons anymore. Each soldier held a matter disintegrator, a device that could break apart the basic building blocks of anything it touched. They also carried temporal rifles that could age their targets by centuries in the span of seconds. Open fire, Lim commanded. First wave of Zephyrian defenders charged into a wall of impossible destruction. The matter disintegrators didn't just kill them, they erased them. Alien warriors simply came apart at the atomic level. Their chitin armor and razor-sharp claws dissolving into nothing more than scattered particles. One particularly large Zephyrian warrior, easily 8 feet tall with armor that gleamed like black metal, managed to get close to Lim's position. The creature raised its bioplasma weapon, ready to melt the human kernel. Where he stood, Lim calmly raised his temporal rifle and pulled the trigger. The effect was both beautiful and horrible to watch. The alien warrior began to age rapidly, its body experiencing centuries of time in mere seconds. Its armor cracked and crumbled. Its weapons fell apart in its hands. Its body withered and turned to dust, leaving only empty space where a moment before there had been a deadly enemy. "Push forward," Lim ordered. "Oh. I want every hive cleared by sunset." The Marines moved through the alien city like death itself. Nothing could stop them. The Zephyrians' bioarmor was useless against weapons that could disintegrate matter. Their plasma weapons meant nothing against soldiers who could age them to dust before they could fire. Behind them, they left only empty shells of buildings and piles of dust that had once been living creatures. The proud homeworld of the Zephyrian Empire was becoming a graveyard with every step they took. High above the planet, Admiral Park's son, he stood on the bridge of her dreadnought, the Inchin's Revenge. The massive warship had been equipped with humanity's most terrifying weapon, singularity cannons that could create artificial black holes. "Singularity weapons are charged and ready," reported her weapons officer. Target locked on the planetary. Corps Admiral Park stared down at the world below. Soon it would no longer exist. The entire planet would collapse into a black hole, taking with it every trace of the species that had dared to threaten humanity's survival. "Ma'am," her tactical officer, Lieutenant Song Min-ho, said hesitantly, "there are still human troops on the surface. Colonel Lim's Marines are?" "They knew the mission parameters when they volunteered," Admiral Park interrupted, her voice cold as space itself. "Colonel Lim's team has extraction protocols. They know what's coming. Fire when ready." Singularity cannon fired with a sound like reality itself being torn apart. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared at the center of Zephyr Prime and immediately began to grow. The artificial black hole started small, but it was hungry. It began to feed on the planet itself. The effect was slow enough that everyone could see what was happening. The ground began to crack and shift as gravity went insane. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years crumbled and were pulled toward the growing darkness. The very air began to flow toward the black hole like water going down a drain. Lim's Marines had already been extracted, their dropships racing away from the doomed planet. But the Zephyrians had nowhere to run. Their screams echoed across space as their homeworld died beneath them, torn apart by forces they could barely understand. In another part of the galaxy, Dr. Shin Najin was putting the finishing touches on humanity's final gift to their enemies. The virus she had created was designed specifically to target Drakmor physiology. It would spread through their reptilian bodies like wildfire, shutting down their organs one by one until nothing remained but empty husks. The plague was already spreading through the Drakmor fleets. Ship after ship went silent as their crews died in agony. The proud reptilian race that had allied with the Zephyrians was learning too late that humans made very thorough enemies. Across the galaxy, ancient civilizations that had remained neutral during the war began broadcasting desperate messages to Earth. They had seen enough of humanity's new form of warfare to know they wanted no part of it. The age of mercy was over. The age of human dominance had begun. Ambassador Jung Hyman walked into the great hall of the newly formed Galactic Assembly, her footsteps echoing in the massive chamber. The building had been constructed on a neutral world, far from Earth, but everyone knew who really controlled this meeting. The representatives of dozens of alien species sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of tentacles, scales, fur, and stranger things. But they all had one thing in common. They were terrified. Jung Hyman took her place at the central podium, representing humanity. 6 months ago, she would have been just one voice among many in a galaxy full of different powers. Today, she was the voice of the only remaining superpower in known space. The Zephyrian species is extinct, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. She spoke without emotion, like she was reading a grocery list instead of announcing the death of an entire civilization. 97% of their Drakmor allies have been eliminated. The remaining 3% exist only because they surrendered before our final protocols were implemented. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some had tentacles that writhed nervously. Others had eyes that darted around the room looking for exits. A few of the more insect-like species made clicking sounds that might have been fear or anger. Where once the Zephyrian Empire had controlled hundreds of worlds, now there was only empty space marked by radiation and strange scars in reality itself. Entire solar systems had been wiped clean. Planets had been turned into black holes. Some places had been hit by quantum weapons that made space itself unstable areas, where ships couldn't travel because the laws of physics no longer worked properly. We want to make something very clear, Jung Hyman continued, looking directly at each group of delegates in turn. For 3 years, we offered peace talks, suggested prisoner exchanges. We showed mercy to captured enemies. We followed every rule of civilized warfare. Her voice grew harder as she spoke. We were answered with torture broadcasts. We watched our soldiers being dissolved in acid while your allies laughed. We saw our civilians used as experimental subjects. You mistook our desire for peace as an ability to wage war. On Earth, President Nam Seo-hyun was giving a similar speech that was being broadcast to every surviving world in the galaxy. Her words carried the same message. Humanity had tried to be civilized, and civilization had failed them, we thought. We were weak because we didn't want to fight, President Nam said from the steps of the rebuilt government building in Seoul. The city had been rebuilt after alien bombing runs. But now it stood stronger than before. You confused our compassion with cowardice. You learned too late that human mercy was a gift, not a weakness. And gifts can be taken away. Across human space, the work of rebuilding was already underway. But it wasn't the same kind of rebuilding that had happened after previous wars. General Cho Woo-jin oversaw the construction of memorial gardens where alien cities had once stood. Each flower represented a human life lost to alien cruelty. Each tree was a promise that such suffering would never be allowed again. The gardens were beautiful, but they were also warnings. They showed what happened to those who pushed humanity too far. Entire alien civilizations had been turned into flower beds and peaceful parks where human children could play safely. In the deep research facilities beneath Luna Base, Dr. B. Kai Young and her teams were already working on the next generation of impossible weapons. They had learned that conventional military thinking was useless against truly advanced technology. Now, they were developing devices that could erase entire solar systems from history itself, making it so they had never existed in the first place. Other projects included weapons that could rewrite the genetic code of living beings across light years of space, turning enemy species into something harmless, or simply making them forget how to reproduce. There were plans for time displacement bombs that could age entire worlds by millions of years in seconds. Devices that could make the laws of physics work differently in enemy territory. Humanity had tasted ultimate power during the war against the Zephyrians, and they found they quite liked the flavor. Why settle for merely winning battles when you could eliminate your enemies so completely that it was like they had never existed at all? Back in the Galactic Assembly, Ambassador Jung Hyman was finishing her speech. The alien delegates sat in complete silence, afraid to even whisper among themselves. They had all seen the recordings of what had happened to the Zephyrian Empire. They knew that one wrong move could result in their own species joining the list of extinct civilizations. The galaxy has learned an important lesson, Jung Hyman said, her eyes sweeping across the frightened faces before her. Humanity fights with honor and follows the rules of war until those rules fail us. When honor becomes a weakness that gets our people killed, we abandon it completely. When civilized warfare becomes a joke that our enemies laugh at, we become uncivilized. She paused, letting her words sink in. And when we fight without limits, everything becomes nothing. The silence in the hall was absolute, even the air recycling. Systems seemed to whisper more quietly, as if afraid to disturb the moment. Their enemies had been winning until humanity declared total annihilation. Now, in the silence of dead worlds and empty space, the universe knew who truly ruled the stars. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human dominance had begun.